You're just dead weight to us." Stephanie's words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. My whole body froze, my mind scrambling to process what my own daughter had just hurled at me. My mouth went dry, my fingers trembled. I looked at her. My girl, the one I'd rocked to sleep so many nights, for whom I'd sewn Halloween costumes until dawn, for whom I'd saved every penny to pay for college. Her brown eyes, so much like her father's, stared back with a mix of anger and... was it contempt? "I understand," was all I could manage. Stephanie looked away, running a hand through her hair in that nervous gesture I'd known since she was a teenager. Maybe there was a flicker of regret, but the damage was done. Words, once spoken, can't be unsaid. "Mom, I didn't mean..." I raised my hand, cutting her off. "No, you did. And maybe it needed to be said." I left the room before the tears could start. At 67, with arthritis in the hands that had worked so tirelessly, I had just discovered I was a burden to my own daughter. You must be wondering how we got to this point. How a mother and daughter who were once so close ended up in such a raw, painful situation. Let me take you back a little. My name is Susan Miller. I've been a widow for 3 years, ever since Arthur, my partner of 4 decades, passed away from a sudden heart attack. We didn't have time for elaborate goodbyes, no chance to resolve any lingering emotions. One morning he complained of chest pain while we were having coffee. By that afternoon I was signing papers at the hospital, too stunned to truly grasp that I was now utterly alone. Our house, where we raised our 2 kids, Stephanie and David, suddenly felt cavernous. The empty rooms echoed with memories. Arthur's side of the bed remained neatly made, untouched. I found myself talking to myself, waiting for answers that would never come. That's when the arthritis, which had bothered me for years, drastically worsened. The doctors said emotional stress might have accelerated it. My hands, always so agile with a needle and thread, started to fail me. I'd wake up with aches that even the strongest medicine couldn't completely quell. Our health insurance was basic. The more effective treatments weren't covered. My elementary school teacher's pension barely covered essential expenses. That's when I made the difficult decision to sell our house. "Mom, are you sure?" David asked over the phone from Denver, where he lives with his family. "You love that house. They're just walls, honey. I need to take care of my health now." Stephanie, always the more practical one, supported my decision. "It makes sense, Mom. A smaller house is less upkeep, and you can use the money for your treatments." It was Stephanie who suggested I stay temporarily at her place until I found a suitable spot to buy. "Stay as long as you need," she'd said, with a smile that seemed genuine at the time. "The kids will love having Grandma around." And so, I sold the house where I'd lived for 35 years. I put the money in the bank, packed a few keepsakes that fit into 2 suitcases, and moved into the guest room at Stephanie's house. At first, everything seemed perfect. Leo, 8, and Chloe, 5, truly loved having Grandma in the house. I'd help them with homework, tell stories, teach Leo how to make increasingly elaborate paper airplanes. Chloe was fascinated by my colorful button collection, which I kept in small boxes, organized by color. "Grandma, this blue one looks like the sky," she'd say, holding a mother-of-pearl button up to the light. I took care of the kids while Stephanie and Mark worked. I'd prepare lunch, keep the house tidy. I felt useful, a part of the family. In those first few weeks, Stephanie would come home from work and hug me, grateful. "I don't know what we'd do without you, Mom." But little by little, I noticed subtle changes. First, it was the glances. Whenever I suggested something about the house or the kids, Stephanie would exchange quick looks with Mark. When I'd walk into the living room, conversations would abruptly stop. My space in the fridge started to shrink. My spices, which I'd always kept in organized jars, were relegated to a high shelf, difficult for me to reach with my back issues. One evening, I overheard Stephanie on the phone with someone. It wasn't my intention to listen, but her voice was agitated. "I don't know how much longer I can take it, Kim. It's like having an extra child in the house, except this one never grows up." That hurt. It hurt deeply. But I swallowed my tears and pretended not to have heard a thing when she appeared in the kitchen a few minutes later. Weeks turned into months. Months into years. Almost 3 years had passed since I'd moved in. Most of the money from selling the house was now gone, eaten up by treatments, medications, and the small contributions I'd insisted on making towards household expenses, even against Stephanie's initial protests. "You don't have to, Mom," she'd said at first. Later, she just started accepting it without a word. I started looking for small apartments to rent, but the prices were absurd. My pension barely covered rent, let alone other expenses. I thought about going back to sewing to supplement my income, but my hands just didn't obey like they used to. It was in this context that I overheard that fateful conversation in the kitchen, one I really shouldn't have heard. "I can't take it anymore, Mark. She's always here, always in the way, always giving her 2 cents, Stephanie was saying, her voice thick with irritation. "She's your mother, Steph. What do you want to do?" Mark's voice sounded tired, as if this wasn't the first time they'd had this conversation. "She has her pension. She could rent a room somewhere. It's not our problem." I went back to my room with a broken heart. That night, I couldn't eat dinner. I said I had a headache, which wasn't a lie. My head throbbed with dark thoughts. In the following days, I tried to make myself less noticeable. I'd eat quickly, avoid the living room, limit my interactions with the kids even when they sought me out. Maybe then Stephanie would realize I didn't want to be a bother. But the tension only grew, until that Thursday arrived. I was in my room, organizing my pills in my weekly dispenser. One for arthritis, another for blood pressure, another for cholesterol, when Stephanie walked in without knocking. Her face was tense, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Mom, we need to talk about your situation here." And that's how we got to that terrible moment, with the words "dead weight" still echoing between us. That night, after our argument, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying my entire life. I remembered when Stephanie was born, so tiny and perfect. How Arthur cried holding her for the first time. The sleepless nights when she had a fever. The birthday parties I organized even when money was tight. The pride I felt when she graduated. The first in our family to get a college degree. Where did it all change? At what point did I become a burden? By morning, with deep circles under my eyes and a renewed determination, I picked up my old cell phone. There was a name I hadn't called in months. Patricia. Patricia was my colleague at the public elementary school where I taught for 30 years. We retired together and stayed in touch. Though in recent years, especially after Arthur's death, I'd isolated myself a bit. She answered on the second ring. "Susan? What a nice surprise. I was just thinking about you the other day." "Patricia." My voice cracked. "I need help." I told her everything. The words tumbled out, sometimes interrupted by sobs I tried to stifle. Patricia listened in silence. "Come over today," she said when I finished. I've got a spare room since my daughter moved overseas. I don't want to be a bother. A bother? Susan, you're my friend. And to be honest, I've been feeling lonely myself. It would be great to have some company. After hanging up, I packed my things into the same 2 suitcases I'd arrived with. I hadn't accumulated much in the last few years. I left a simple note on the nightstand. I've gone to Patricia's. Don't worry about me. I'll call once I'm settled. I called a cab. When it arrived, Leo and Chloe were at school. Mark was at work. Stephanie was home, but locked in her room after our argument. I didn't say goodbye in person. Maybe it was cowardly of me, but I didn't have the strength for another confrontation. Upon arriving at Patricia's house, I was met with a tight hug. She lived in a spacious house in a quiet neighborhood, inherited from her parents. The room she offered me was airy, with a window overlooking a small garden. "Stay as long as you need," she said. And this time, the words felt genuinely true. That afternoon, as we sipped tea on the porch, Patricia mentioned something that would completely change my perspective. "You know, Susan, it's not just you. Brenda's going through some tough times with her son, too. And Donna sold her house to help her daughter, who barely visits her now. Brenda and Donna were also our colleagues from school. The 4 of us had been an inseparable group back in our teaching days. We were thinking of getting together this weekend. You should come." And so, the following Saturday, the 4 friends from decades ago were reunited. All widows, all with stories of sacrifice for their children, all facing loneliness in different ways. It was Donna who had the idea. What if we lived together? We could rent a bigger house, split the expenses, keep each other company. The suggestion hung in the air for a few seconds before we all started talking at once, excited by the possibility. 3 days passed without a word from Stephanie. On the 4th day, Stephanie showed up at Patricia's house, her eyes red. She looked like she'd been crying. "Why haven't you answered my calls?" she asked as soon as I opened the door. "My phone broke," I lied. Truth was, I'd turned it off, needing that time to gather my thoughts and feelings. She looked around, visibly surprised by Patricia's spacious, well-decorated home. Even more surprised when Brenda and Donna appeared in the living room, bringing in a tray with coffee and cookies. "We're thinking of renting a house together," I explained calmly. "Share expenses, keep each other company." Stephanie's face transformed. I saw something in her eyes. Surprise, confusion, and maybe a touch of relief. "Mom, I'm so sorry for what I said. I was stressed. I wasn't thinking straight. I looked at my daughter. I still loved her, of course. But something had broken between us. Something that might be mended with time and effort, but that would never be quite the same. It's okay, honey. Sometimes we need to hear hard truths to move forward." She lowered her eyes, embarrassed. "You can come back home, if you want. We can make it work." I took her hands in mine, noticing how young and strong they were compared to my own, marked by time and arthritis. "I think it's better this way, Stephanie. You have your family, your life. And now I'm discovering I can still have mine too." Her eyes welled up with tears. "I love you, Mom. I never meant to hurt you." "I know, honey. I love you too." In that moment, I realized what was happening wasn't just about finding a place to live. It was about rediscovering my worth, my independence. About realizing that at 67, I wasn't dead weight. I was just starting a new chapter. Patricia approached, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Susan, tell her about our plans for the community garden." And so I did. with an enthusiasm I hadn't felt in years. I talked about the piano lessons Patricia planned to offer at home, about the cakes Brenda made for parties, about how I could get back into sewing. Not much, just enough to supplement my income. As I spoke, I saw Stephanie's gaze shift. Maybe she was finally seeing me, truly seeing me, for the first time in a long time, not as a dependent older woman, a problem to be solved, but as a whole woman, with desires, plans, and the ability to start over. When she said goodbye, promising to bring the kids to visit me on Sunday, I felt a mix of sadness and liberation. I closed the door and went back to the living room, where my friends were waiting. "Is everything okay?" Brenda asked, always the most maternal of the group. I took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "It will be," I replied. "I think it will be." That night, sitting on the porch under a starry sky, the four of us began to plan our new life together. We weren't just lonely widows or rejected mothers anymore. We were women rediscovering our strength, supporting each other. And I, who hours earlier had felt like dead weight, realized I'd never been more alive. But what would happen when we finally moved into our new house? How would I rebuild my relationship with Stephanie from this new place? And how would the children, my dear grandchildren, react to this suddenly independent grandma? That, my friends, is a story that's still being written. That night, as we chatted on Patricia's porch, I felt something awaken inside me. A feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. Possibility. It wasn't just about having a roof over my head or splitting expenses. It was about belonging again, about having a voice. "I found a perfect house in Maplewood Heights," Donna said, showing photos on her phone. 4 bedrooms, a big yard for the garden, spacious living room. The rent divided by 4 is really reasonable. "And there's a covered area in the back that could be your sewing studio, Susan," Brenda added, squeezing my hand. I looked at those 3 women, all with laugh lines similar to mine, all with stories of love, loss, and new beginnings. None of us were perfect. We all carried scars. But together, we seemed stronger. "When can we see the house?" I asked, feeling an excitement I hadn't had in years. 2 weeks later, we were signing the lease. A month after that fateful argument with Stephanie, I had a new home. The first Sunday Stephanie brought the kids to visit was strange. She seemed out of place, as if she didn't quite know how to act. Leo and Chloe, on the other hand, were enchanted by the new house. "Grandma, you live with 3 other grandmas?" Chloe asked, her eyes wide, as if we'd formed a secret grandma club. "Yes, sweetie. We've been friends for a long time." "Like the Winks," she exclaimed, referring to a cartoon she adored. Leo explored the yard, fascinated by the small garden we were starting to plant. "Can I help take care of the plants when I come visit you?" "Of course you can. I'll set aside a plot just for you." Stephanie watched everything with an expression difficult to decipher. When the children went to play with Brenda, who had prepared a box of old board games, my daughter finally spoke what seemed to be stuck in her throat. "You seem happy, Mom." There was no accusation in her voice, just a surprised observation. "I'm rediscovering some parts of myself, honey." She lowered her eyes, nervously fiddling with her purse strap. "I'm so sorry for everything. I really didn't mean to." "I know," I interrupted softly, "but maybe it needed to happen." In that moment, I remembered an episode from many years ago, when Stephanie was only 6. A flashback so vivid I could almost smell the wet earth from that day. It was a Saturday afternoon. Arthur had taken David to soccer practice, and I was alone with Stephanie. We decided to plant flowers in the small front garden of our house. "Mom, why do some seeds grow and others don't?" she asked, with the typical curiosity of her age. "Sometimes, sweetie, a seed needs to be planted in the right place to blossom. Not every soil is good for every plant." She frowned, concentrating on the task of making small holes in the dirt. "How do you know where to plant each one?" I smiled, running my hand through her hair. "We learn by observing, by experimenting, and sometimes even when we think we know, nature surprises us." Stephanie shoved her little hands into the earth, feeling its texture. "When I grow up, I want to have a huge garden with all the flowers in the world." "And you will, my love. You can have everything you want, if you work for it." She looked at me with those big, trusting eyes. "You're going to help me take care of my garden, aren't you, Mommy?" "Always," I promised, without imagining how life would lead us down such different paths than we dreamed on that sunny afternoon. I came back to the present, seeing my adult daughter in front of me, carrying the weight of her own choices and commitments. "Remember when we planted daisies in the garden of the old house?" I asked. She blinked, surprised by the change of subject. "Vaguely." "You asked me if I'd help take care of your garden when you grew up." Stephanie smiled faintly. "And you said yes." "And I tried, honey. Maybe I tried too hard, to the point of suffocating your own flowers." Her eyes filled with tears. "Don't say that, Mom. It's not an accusation. It's an observation. Sometimes, even with the best intentions, we end up in the wrong place, at the wrong time." She came closer, holding my wrinkled hands in hers. "I never meant to hurt you. It's just, life got so complicated. Work, the kids, the bills. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning." "I understand more than you imagine." In that moment, Leo came running back, interrupting our conversation. "Mom, Aunt Brenda has a super cool board game. Can we buy one just like it?" The moment of vulnerability passed, but something had changed between us. A small crack in the wall we had built, allowing a little light to pass through. The following weeks were about adaptation. Each of us brought into the house not just our physical belongings, but also our habits, preferences, and quirks. There were moments of tension, of course. Donna was too methodical with cleaning. Brenda had a habit of talking loudly on the phone. Patricia sometimes played the piano late. As for me, I discovered I'd become more rigid and stubborn than I'd imagined. Years of living with Arthur, who rarely disagreed with me, hadn't prepared me to negotiate spaces and routines with three strong-willed women. One night we had our first big argument. The topic? Refrigerator organization. "It makes no sense to keep tomatoes in the fridge, Donna. They lose their flavor," I argued. "But they last longer. And with this heat, they spoil in 2 days if they're left out," she retorted. "My mom always said a tomato is a fruit, and fruit doesn't go in the fridge," Brenda insisted. "Technically, a tomato is a fruit, but culinarily it's treated like a vegetable," Patricia mused, ever the teacher. The discussion escalated until suddenly, we all burst into laughter. 4 ladies over 60 fighting over tomatoes. That night, I opened a bottle of wine I'd saved for special occasions, and we toasted to our new chosen family. To the tomatoes wherever they may be. Donna toasted, provoking more laughter. It was in this atmosphere of rediscovery that I began to resume my sewing. My hands still ached, but I found that by working in small sessions and with the right tools, I could produce simple pieces. I started doing small mending jobs for neighbors, then moved on to making decorative aprons, quilted tote bags, and cushion covers. Patricia, who'd been a music teacher before shifting to the regular school system, started giving piano lessons again from her place. Brenda, with her knack for baking, began taking cake orders. Donna, the most organized of us, looked after the garden and sold some of the produce at the local farmer's market. None of us were going to get rich from these activities, but the extra cash, combined with our pensions, allowed us to live with dignity and even put a little aside for emergencies. More important than the financial aspect was the sense of purpose. We weren't just old women waiting for time to pass. We were productive, creative, alive women. One day, about 2 months after I'd moved out, I got an unexpected call from Mark, my son-in-law. "Susan, I need some advice," he said after the initial hellos. "It's about Stephanie." I sat down, feeling a knot of apprehension. "What's wrong?" "She's not doing well. She's been irritable, distant. I think she might be depressed, but she refuses to get help." My chest tightened. Despite everything, Stephanie was my daughter, and her suffering was mine too. "How long has she been like this?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "To be honest, ever since you moved out." That caught me off guard. But she seemed relieved when I left. "I think it's more complicated than that. She feels guilty, and I think she misses you, even if she won't admit it." I closed my eyes, remembering another moment from the past, when Stephanie was 15. It was a stormy night. Arthur was away on a business trip, and David was asleep in the next room. Stephanie had gone out with friends to a party, promising to be back before 10 p.m. When the clock struck 11 p.m. and she still wasn't home, I started to panic. I called her friends' parents, but no one knew anything. I was about to call the police when I heard the front door open. Stephanie walked in, drenched, makeup smudged, smelling faintly of alcohol. My relief quickly turned to fury. "Where were you?" I nearly had a heart attack with worry. She threw her bag on the sofa, rolling her eyes. "Don't exaggerate, Mom. I just lost track of time." "Did you drink? Do you have any idea of the danger you were in, coming back alone in this storm?" "Stop treating me like a kid. I'm 15, not 5. The argument escalated quickly. Harsh words were exchanged, until Stephanie screamed something that left me paralyzed. "You suffocate everyone in this house. That's why Dad travels so much, to get away from you." She ran to her room, slamming the door. I stood in the living room feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Was it true? Did Arthur volunteer for those business trips to get away from me? Hours later, after the storm had passed, I heard soft knocks on my bedroom door. Stephanie came in, eyes swollen from crying. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it." I opened my arms and she fell into them, just like she did when she was little. We stayed like that for a long time, just embracing, no words. "I'm so afraid of disappointing you," she whispered against my shoulder. "You could never disappoint me, honey. Never. Sometimes I feel like I'll never be good enough. You're so strong, so determined, and I'm a mess." I pulled back a little to look into her eyes. "Stephanie, you don't have to be like me. You need to be yourself, with your own mistakes and triumphs." She sniffled, wiping her tears. "Promise you'll never abandon me, even when I'm awful to you." "I promise," I replied, without imagining that one day that promise would be tested in ways we couldn't foresee. Back in the present, I sighed into the phone. "Mark, I'll talk to her, but I can't promise miracles." "Thanks, Susan. She's at work now, but maybe you could come for dinner tomorrow." I agreed, hanging up the phone with a strange feeling in my chest. How ironic that now, when I'd finally found my own space, I was being called back to help the daughter who had seemingly rejected me. I told my friends about the call during dinner. "Do you think she wants you to move back in?" Brenda asked, sounding concerned. "I don't know, but even if she does, I'm not going back. Not in the same way." "You sound determined," Donna observed. "I am. I love my daughter, but I've learned I can love her without erasing myself." Patricia smiled, serving more salad. Susan Miller discovering her worth at 67. Who would have thought? We all laughed, and I felt a wave of gratitude for having these women in my life. The next night, I went to Stephanie's house for dinner. Leo and Chloe greeted me with enthusiastic hugs, telling me all about school. Mark made lasagna, my favorite dish. Stephanie was quiet, avoiding my gaze. After dinner, when the kids were in bed, we finally had some alone time on the back porch. "Mark called me," I began, without beating around the bush. "He's worried about you." She shrugged, fiddling with the bracelet she wore. "He exaggerates." That's not how it sounded. And looking at you now, I think he's right to worry. Stephanie finally met my eyes, which were brimming with unshed tears. "Why don't you hate me, Mom? After what I said, what I did." "Because I'm your mother, and because I understand more than you imagine." "How can you understand? You would never treat your mother the way I treated you." I took a deep breath, preparing to share something I'd never told anyone, not even Arthur. When my mother became a widow, she came to live with us. You were very little. Maybe you don't remember. It was shortly before she passed away. Stephanie frowned, trying to recall. Vaguely. She had early onset Alzheimer's. She'd forget things, repeat the same stories, sometimes get agitated at night. You and David were young kids. Arthur worked all day, and I had to manage everything. I paused, feeling the weight of those memories. One night, after she'd knocked over a vase of flowers and woken the kids with her confused cries, I lost my patience. I said horrible things. That she was a burden, that she was destroying our family, that maybe it would be better to put her somewhere. Stephanie looked at me, astonished. I never imagined. The next day, she had a stroke. She died 3 days later without regaining consciousness, without me being able to ask for forgiveness. Tears were now streaming freely down my face. It was the first time I'd verbalized this guilt I'd carried for decades. Mom, you couldn't have known. No, I couldn't. Just as you couldn't have predicted how your words would affect me. We're human, Stephanie. Imperfect, fallible. Sometimes we hurt the ones we love most. She moved closer, holding my hands. I miss you so much. The house feels empty without you. The kids ask about you every day. I miss you all too, but we need to find a new way to be a family. A way that respects who we are now. We talked for hours that night. About unexpressed expectations. About the burden of being a woman in a society that expects us to be perfect caregivers. About the fear of aging. About the guilt we carry for never being enough. When I returned home, it was past midnight. My friends had left a light on for me and a note on the fridge. There's cake on the counter. Hope everything went well. I smiled, feeling blessed to have found this new safe harbor. In the following weeks, we established a new routine. On Sundays, Stephanie brought the kids over for lunch with us. On Wednesdays, I went to her house to help with Leo and Chloe's homework. Slowly, our relationship began to rebuild, not as it was before. It never would be, but as something new, based on mutual respect and clearer boundaries. One day, Stephanie surprised me by showing up at my place alone, outside of our usual days. "Is something wrong?" I asked, concerned. "No, nothing serious. I just wanted to show you this." She pulled an envelope from her bag. Inside was a brochure from a local college and an acceptance letter. "I'm going back to school, Master's in Business Administration." "Stephanie, that's wonderful!" I exclaimed, genuinely happy for her. It was always my dream, but I put it off when the kids were born. Then it seemed impossible to juggle with work. She paused, smiling shyly. "You inspired me, you know? Seeing you start over at 67, I thought, if my mom can do it, so can I." Those words touched my heart in a way I can't describe. The idea that my late-in-life journey of self-discovery could inspire my own daughter was profoundly moving. "I'm so proud of you," I said, hugging her. "I'll need help with the kids a few days a week," she continued. "I thought maybe you could." "Of course I can," I interrupted. "But this time, we'll set up a clear agreement. Define days and times, respecting my commitments here too." She nodded, understanding the subtle but important difference. I wasn't a grandmother desperate to feel useful anymore, accepting any condition to be close to my family. I was a woman with her own life, offering help out of love, not obligation or fear of abandonment. 6 months had passed since that terrible Thursday, when I was called dead weight. My life had transformed in ways I could never have imagined. Our house became a small hub of activity in the neighborhood. Patricia gave piano lessons 3 times a week. Brenda offered baking workshops on Saturdays. Donna organized a community gardening group that met in our backyard. I went back to teaching basic sewing to neighborhood teens, showing them how to do simple repairs and create little things. My relationship with Stephanie was still a work in progress, with its ups and downs. Some days that old tension would still flare up, but now we had better ways to handle it. We talked things out openly, respecting each other's boundaries. David, my son who lives in Denver, came to visit with his family. He was really struck by my new life. "Mom, you look 10 years younger," he commented. "That's what happens when you realize you still have value," I replied, smiling. One afternoon, while I was sewing on the porch, my 8-year-old grandson, Leo, sat down next to me with this really serious look on his face. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetie." "Why don't you live with us anymore? Is it because Mom got mad at you?" I put my sewing aside, thinking carefully about how to answer. "It's not that simple, Leo. Sometimes people just need their own space to be happy. Your mom has her family. You, your sister, your dad. And now I have my family too. My friends." He furrowed his brow, processing it all. "But you're still our grandma, right?" "Always. Nothing will ever change that." "And you're happy here?" I looked around at the blooming garden, at this house so full of life, at my hands that despite the arthritis could still create beautiful things. "Yes, Leo. I'm very happy here." He smiled, satisfied with my answer. "Okay then, because Mom said the most important thing is for you to be happy." Those simple words from a child showed me just how far we'd come. Stephanie, who just months before saw me as a burden, was now teaching her kids how important my happiness was. Today I'm turning 68. My friends organized a little backyard party. Stephanie, Mark, and the kids came, along with some neighbors and students from our workshops. As I watch everyone talking and laughing, I think about the extraordinary journey I've been on this past year. From the deep pain of feeling rejected by my own daughter, to the joy of rediscovering my worth and purpose. I'm not naive. I know I'll still face challenges. My arthritis isn't going to magically get better. Someday I might need more help than I can admit right now. But I've learned that dependency and dignity aren't mutually exclusive. That asking for help doesn't mean you're a burden. That getting older isn't about disappearing. Stephanie approaches, carrying a small package. Happy birthday, Mom. I open the gift and find a photo album. On the first few pages, old family photos, me young, with Arthur and the kids when they were little. On the following pages, recent pictures, me with my friends, with my grandkids, teaching sewing, working in the garden. On the last page, a photo I didn't even remember being taken. Me on the porch, laughing at something Patricia was saying. Below it, a phrase handwritten by Stephanie. To my mom, who taught me it's never too late to bloom. Tears well up, but they're different from the ones I cried that terrible night. These are tears of gratitude, of recognition, of peace. I look around at this improbable garden I planted at 67. Renewed friendships, rediscovered purpose, dignity reclaimed. I think of all the women my age who might be going through what I went through, feeling invisible, disposable, like a deadweight. I want to tell every single one of them, you're not alone. Your story isn't over. There are seeds inside you just waiting for the right soil to sprout. It's never too late to find out that what looks like an end might just be the beginning of something new and unexpectedly beautiful. I'm not dead weight. I'm more alive than ever. And this is just the first page of my new chapter.